Hey all, welcome to Circle of Tone, and today I'm going to try and do the impossible. Obviously, sometimes I'm like, I'll recreate with the correct amp and the correct guitar and all that stuff. This one's impossible. It's Stevie Ray Vaughan and his first album, his first proper album. I say proper, the one before it was amazing. I'll put it in the link. It's like some early work of his. And it's great too, with a female singer. But this is from Texas Flood, and it's my favourite blues tone, so I thought I'd give it a crack. And he uses a Dumble, he uses on paper, actually not on paper, it's in his mind, it's a certain year of a guitar, but there's a twist to that too. So there's quite a few secrets to his tone, and it's not just hearsay, because a lot of it is, understandably, because it's folklore. But this stuff, I've really done my research on this and I've got it down. Maybe the sound, it's a different amp, different speakers, different guitar, but I think I've approximated to get his tone in under 1,500 bucks, so that's pretty significant. So that's it. I hope you like these types of videos. If you do, please subscribe, and I'll get to the music real quick. I won't give away too much. But after the music, I'll go into length, and sometimes people complain about the length, and the gear that I used, and the philosophy, and what I think the main secret of his tone is. And it's not thick strings, and it's not a tube screamer, and it's not a Dumble. There is a secret. So, give me a thumbs up, hit that subscribe, hit that bell, otherwise you'll get one of these right in your children. And we're back. So that was my take on Stevie Ray Vaughan. Obviously I didn't nail it note for note. It was, with my videos I get complaints of why didn't you play properly. I'm not very good at learning songs. I've always been the only guitarist in every band I've been in. And I'm more of a songwriter, believe it or not. So it's I tend to obsess more about the gear than technique. So I improvised, and there's completely new riffs in it. More like the last riff was mine. I struggle on some of the stuff I do. I struggle on things like In Excess. I struggle on things like the Beatles. Their bass is insane. I was surprised at how easy I took to this style of playing. Obviously, I couldn't write it. The skill is in the writing. You know, people obsess about technique and everything, but it's really about his songs and his riffs, his riff writing. But I could play. The technique is like a circular thing, and I kind of do that. So I have quite a lot in common with him when it comes to blues and my style. Like, I hit hard. I have pretty high action. I'm not as good, obviously. You know, let's get that out of the way. I'm not saying but I'm just talking stylistically. I took to his style of playing pretty easy, and it's because a lot of my riff.
Do you hear that train coming? I hope you can hear the overtones. What do they say about tone caps? Don't matter.
Pretty high action. I'm not as good, obviously. You know, let's get that out of the way. I'm not saying but I'm just talking stylistically. I took to his style of playing pretty easy, and it's because a lot of my riffs are I'm not sure if it's the right hand. I think it's the right hand, because he does a lot of blocking with his thumb the same way I do. And it's just from bad technique, because I'm not one of the shredders with the perfect. I'm always like this, which is bad because it limits your mobility. But I wasn't with the first take. I was like, that isn't terrible. Usually I'm cringing after my first take. I'm like, oh, here we go. You know, a week of practicing. But this was pretty easy for me, surprisingly easy, because he is a six-string god, and you know, so that was a relief. Now, what was a pain? Researching. There is about 5 different opinions on pedals, let alone, you know, they say he uses an 808s and things like that, and most photographic evidence doesn't suggest that. It's a tube screamer. And so I finally dug underneath all this and got his producer, and his producer is like, where's Waldo? You'd think somebody who's, you know, produced the best blues tones, arguably, of the modern era, you'd think he'd be on the front of Guitar World magazine and, you know, just giving away secrets left, right and centre, but he's underground, and it's like pulling teeth trying to find an interview with him. But I found him. I got the goods. Here's the secret. I'll get to it. Here's the secret. I'll get to it. It's not a Dumble. It's not a specific Fender. It's not a. It's not this heavy strings. It's not his pickups. It's not his guitar. It's volume. Volume. 150 watt amplifiers with his producer's words. Everything's on 10. And when I say everything, the volume, the mids, the treble, the bass, everything's on 10. That's the secret. That's how he gets it to ring out, because another part of the secret is he is not in a booth with headphones on playing along. He is in the room with the band. And the producer was saying that he was getting frustrated because he's so used to singing and playing at the same time, is that he was kind of struggling with just playing with the band in the room with them, which is pretty funny. But that's where you get the tone when you bend something and it stays forever. It's because the loud ass amp that he has is going back through his pickups and feeding up and creating loops, which is why it's almost like a sustainer on some of his notes. So you can't get that sustain in a pedal. You see Tube Screamer, you cannot get that tone if you're in bedroom level, you know. It's unfortunately the reason that a lot of these musicians, that their tone is so unobtainable, is because nobody is willing to put a plexi on full like Eddie Van Halen did. They say, oh, he used a variac and all that stuff, but generally he just turned it up to 10. The reason he was using variacs was probably just for practicing and stuff, and there wasn't. I've done tests, tone tests on people like Eddie Van Halen, and the tap-in sound you can get, you can't get it through a variac. I've used variacs. It's volume, so it's like that's the key, man. It's not his weird, you know, speakers. It's not because he used 15 inches, he used 12 inches, he used Marshalls, he used Fender cabs, he used all sorts of stuff. But the key was volume. So that's it. And I mentioned his Strat. It's supposed to be, you know, a 59 Strat. But it's not a 59 Strat. It's actually like a 62. And not a lot of people know that. They think it's a 59. It's a 62. He called it a 59 because he saw somewhere on it was printed a 59. But one of his friends pointed out, says, hey, bro, that's a 62. So, you know, the famous one with the Stevie SRV on it. And yeah, he was a guy where the reason I feel an affinity with him is because he liked his Japanese guitars as well. He liked his Tokais, and you know, what an absolute god of a player. And it's so tragic. You know, I'll get to his story because a lot of people might not know. You know, I wasn't actually a big fan. The only reason I think I'm influenced by him because of my playing style, I was like, holy crap. It's just I've been in bars, you know, bar crawls and everything, and his music's always playing. So I think that's where I kind of get my technique from. I didn't even own an album of his or anything, but I was like a duck to water trying to learn his songs. So I need to get clued up on his back catalogue. And yeah, so what did he use? He used usually Fenders and a Dumble. And the Dumble that he had was owned, the one he used on Texas Flood, it was just a Dumble. It wasn't, the reason people don't know what he used is because on the Texas Flood album, the producer said he literally had 36 guitar amps to choose from. So, you know, with all that flying around in the studio, we don't know what he used in the end, and we don't know. But he did, the producer did say it was a Dumble. And specifically, a Dumble mic'd up 1 foot away from the cone. And it was a 12-inch speaker that was mic'd up. So we know, so that's what I did when, and the way that I managed it was he mic'd, so it was a 1 SM57 to get that guitar sound. But if you just put one SM57 in front of a 12-inch speaker and, you know, like just under a foot away from it, you won't get the sound. You'll get close, but you won't get the sound. Another key, which is what I found out in the Beatles and a lot of other things I've done, is the room. So you have bleed going into the drums, you have bleed going into the bass, and you have bleed, coming into the guitar track was actually pretty baffled, separated. It wasn't completely separated, each instrument, but you could hear a bit of it. So what I did was I blended in the main guitar was a foot away from the speaker, and then I blended in the room. So with a vintage Fender, because he did have all amps blaring at the same time, but one was mic'd up properly. So this one mic was picking up ambience from other sources. So then that's what I did. So you had a Fender and the Dumble going. The Dumble was mic'd, and so I made sure I had the ambient noise of a Fender going in there as well in the background. And then that thickened it up. And then I was like, there it is. I went through all sorts of variations of it, because this song, when you listen to the song, the album version of the song, it sounds different every time. One minute you think it has distortion, you're listening to it on headphones, then you listen to it on monitors and it's kind of clean sounding. So it's almost like a chameleon. So I managed to find an isolated track of the guitar, which is a godsend. And what he's been doing, a sneaky bugger, it's basically guitar, tube screamer, and the Dumble, right? Which is the crux of the sound. Tube screamer is always on for the entire song. But when he'd go into a solo, or when he'd do a flourish, like he'd switch on a second tube screamer. Hey guys, I am terrified right now, because I just found out a tidbit about Stevie Ray Vaughan's sound, which is terrifying, and that he uses 150 watt Dumbles and things like that to get his sound. It's not the thick strings, it's not the tube screamers, it's not the just his technique. The way that the Dumble, the way that he can get that sustain is from being in the same room as a full cranked 150 watt amp. We're not talking, it's turned up to 5. From the producer's mouth, everything's on 10. So that's what I gotta do. So this is the Pure Electra. You can see my very neat pedal board in the background. It's I'm very anal about things like that, so it's all got to be neat and tidy. So there it is, completely pristine and neat. And there's some more down there. So what have we got today? We got a Black Star, and you can see it's a modded Black Star. So you can see one of the inputs has a master volume mod on it, but you can see my volume is maxed out. I had to set the amp to 8 ohms, and essentially what my Black Star is a vintage Fender with 4 different settings. So it goes from vintage Fenders to mid Fender to Plexi to modern Plexi. So I'm in the notch where it's an old Fender, and the reason I selected a Black Star is because it is ridiculously loud. I've got a vintage Fender that is only like 60 watts, and I want Naomi watts, and I want 150 watts, and this is the loudest amp I have. Actually, my JCM 800, my homebrew 2203, is probably louder, just because I've got a Meron transformer in it, which is insane. So what did I do? I have vintage speakers in my cab, so I'm scared. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a full stack on there, so it'll share the load between all the speakers. So that instead of it blasting through 4 speakers, it's going to be blasting through 8. So obviously it's going to be stepped down in the volume that's coming out of the speaker. And also Stevie Ray Vaughan, he used an actual SM57, one SM57 on each amp, and it was 4 inches back. Actually, it was more than that. It was like a foot back from the cone. So this is all from the producer's mouth. This is all about Texas Flood. So this is I did a lot of research, and this is going to be, without obviously buying $100,000 worth of gear of Dumbles, this is how I'm going to try and do it. So I have the 1981. The other secret is he uses a a first, what they call it, a first production tube screamer. And if I show you the bottom of this tube screamer, I've got 3 tube screamers from this era. If you turn that over, that would be a black label on the bottom of it. And then you get silver labels, and then you get other labels which have the CE mark on it. And when the CE mark is on it, that's not a good one. So I have one of these is a black label on the bottom, and the other one is a silver label, but the other one is only for boosts, because I know that he uses, for rhythms, he uses one tube screamer, and then when he wants to do a solo, he kicks in with another one, with another tube screamer, and that gives it a little bit of a push. And another secret is reverb tanks. I've listened to isolated guitar tracks from the Texas Flood album, and there is an obvious reverb from a spring inside an amp. So I don't have one of those, so I'm going to have to try and use a VST. Lots of little secrets, so keep tuned, and we'll see if it sounds good. Yeah. Hope I don't blow something. I already, by the way, I said, my Fender isn't loud enough. I blew my Fender's power tubes trying to do this video. It was loud, and then it cut to like half power. So I need a new pair of tubes in my Fender. So, blood, sweat and tears. Circle of tone. Breaking amps, bitch. So I managed to find an isolated track of the guitar, which is a godsend. And what he's been doing, a sneaky bugger, it's basically guitar, tube screamer, and the Dumble, right? Which is the crux of the sound. Tube screamer is always on for the entire song. But when he'd go into a solo, or when he'd do a flourish, like the... he'd switch on a second tube screamer. That was what took me the longest time to figure out what he was doing. And the isolated track was a eureka moment, because I could hear it thickening up and not necessarily getting louder, which is what happens with boosts. Once you've boosted it, you can't get any louder, because it's completely, it's completely filled the signal, so you can't fill the signal even more. Even though you're adding a boost, and it's boosting nothing, it actually compresses it even more, but it gives you more distortion, more sustain, and a fatter sound. So that's what it was. So the rumors running around that he used 2 TS9s. He did use 2 TS9s, but only as a boost on the albums. I never saw him use 2 live. Maybe there is a shot of a pedal board out there somewhere for live, but so that's it. Obviously he uses the volume a lot live. So that's it was quite the puzzle trying to figure it out, but we got there in the end. So what did I use? I don't have a Dumble. Those things cost 70 grand just to buy. The key to his interviews, the key is what he says, is that basically, to heart, he's a Fender guy, Fender amps, but they're too quiet because he's an absolute monster. So he wants a 150 watt Fender, and I was thinking, I've got a Fender, it's only 60 watts, and so I can use that in the background, but what do I have that's 150 watt? And I clicked. Black Star. This Black Star is based on vintage Fenders and vintage Marshalls. So what he likes is, because he's used Marshalls in the past as well, so I have the perfect amp for that, and it's ridiculously loud because it's all point-to-point wiring. It's got a big honking transformer on it, and it's ungodly loud. So I can get the volume, which is, remember I said was key, and I can get the clarity because it's based on old Fenders, and I can get a bit of the bite because it's also based on a hybrid of a Marshall. It's got a dial on it that you can turn, and early on it's the Bassmans, and then you go up through Plexi and then modern Plexi. So it's a perfect amp for that, and I cranked everything was on 10. This thing was shaking. I had to make sure that I went through 2 cabinets, because I didn't want 100 watts going straight through one speaker, so I made sure it was going through all 8. And I was rocking, man. So it was great. So I had to blast these monitors to make sure that it fed back through my pickups, when I was holding notes and stuff. And I got some weird overtones on that. I might have sounded too much distortion, because I think that had more breakup than what he was using, than the Dumble. So I had the Black Star doing the grunt work. That was my Dumble. And I had the Fender blasting. I broke the Fender. I was so loud, the power tubes went on it. That's how loud I was cranking everything. And I was breaking strings. So, innocuous enough. A nice guitar. Beautiful old Electra. See if we can spot the difference with the tuning pegs. So we seem to have 3 strings that are longer than the others. That's because I snapped 1, 2, 3 strings during the recording of this video, and I just did a 4th, and this one snapped at the bridge. Stevie Ray Vaughan. I think this is going to turn into some sort of cry for help. He is a visceral, balls to the wall player, and I suffered the consequences. I got blisters, broken strings, busted tubes, just trying to record one song. So, you know, that, I think that is a fitting tribute to the man, you know, blistering blues, literally. Okay, and I'm back with a different guitar. So I mentioned that he had a Fender, a 1962 or 63 Fender Strat. That was his main guitar. And I also mentioned he has a penchant for Japanese guitars. So that's why this was the main rhythm guitar that I used. It's an 80s Electra Strat. So this thing sounded really good, really just more playability. This was awesome. When it comes to solos, this one actually sounded a bit more forgiving. So the solos were done on this. This is another arbor. I don't think this is actually Japanese. I think this is either Korean or Chinese. Because arbor had about 3 or 4 years in Japan before Gibson went nope and started pressuring them with legal issues. So then they fled to Korea, South Korea, and then finally to China. And I've got Japanese era arbor, and the fretwork on those things are insane. They're so good. So is that. That one needs a fret polish, but the frets are still, you know, really, really nice. So that's the guitars that I used, and I'll actually put another clip on there as well, because not everybody. The thing about these tube screamers, he used like I said in the video, the earliest black label tube screamers. So not everybody's going to be able to afford 2 of these bloody things because they cost $500 each. You might be able to get the silver label ones for 300 from, you know, 82 and 83. But the main ones were the black ones, and so that's what I used. I actually only have one black back, like I said in the vid. So there is I have an alternative in the works. Here's a clip. It's of my quad damage distortion pedal. I set it a little bit distorted. What I did, I matched it initially with the song. I was like, oh yeah, there you go. But then when you layer it twice, it's the oldest trick in the book. It actually sounds more distorted then. So it's too much distortion in this one. But I did have the distortion up, so you can turn it down and get it a bit cleaner. So here's the clip of the same song with the quad damage. Okay, and we're back. So that pedal will be out. I've got a rid delay on it, so that will be out, you know, in the nearish future. And it's going to be $100 to start, and then after a while it's going to be $125. So if you like that sound, with that one you can get the solo tone and the rhythm tone out of it, because it has more distortion on tap but it's still musical distortion. It's not just like, you know, metal zone. So yeah, and because it was tough, I have 15-inch speakers because he used 15-inch speakers back in the day, and I mic'd up a lot of my speakers, and the one that came closest was the Blackback. So my Celestian Blackback, I always come back to this damn speaker because it's not a coincidence, because producers know what the good ones are, and they use that one a lot in the day. So to handle the volume of 150 watt head, he's obviously going to have to use Marshall stacks. He does use PA speakers from time to time, but they do not sound good mic'd up, especially with an SM57, a mid-monster. There's no way. That was definitely a greenback or blackback that he used. So a full stack, he wouldn't be messing around with that head, otherwise he'd be blowing speakers left, right and centre. So if you know different, if you have any pictures from that session, you will not be able to find them unless you have personal ones, because it's like the holy grail trying to find that stuff. So the bass guitar, he used, believe it or not, PV amps, and I'm not a fan of the bass sound on the album. It's very MIDI, it's very basic blues runs. Double Trouble, fantastic players, but they do hold back. They know the style of the show, and it's not them. But fair play to those guys. They were, you know, flawless live and flawless on the album, and they just went in there, did their thing. And what a sad story. I think what makes it saddest for me is, you know, after some success, Stevie Ray Vaughan became so addicted to cocaine. It was really sad. And to pep him up, you know, when you wake up and you feel like you're at death's door, what he did was he would put cocaine in his whiskey. So he was doing that for years, and it caught up with him. In fact, I was reading another interview from another producer in one of the later albums, is that he came in and he said he couldn't even stand up. He was in the studio, but then he said, like magic, he could actually stand up, play and sing. But when it came to anything else, he couldn't put sentences together. But when he hit bottom, he was rushed to hospital with stomach issues, and the doctor told him, you know, he'd eaten his stomach away because the cocaine was so acidic, and he almost died. And what is tragic about it is that when he went to rehab, and he came back and he was better than ever, and his albums suffered because he started being too nice and saying, oh, do you want to be on my album? And all of a sudden his album had 20 people on it, and the crux of it was gone, because it was him and Double Trouble. That's what it's all about, him in a room. And now we have backing singers and other guitarists, and it's all watered down. It sounds like Stevie Ray Vaughan on ice. He should have kept it to the minimum. A lot of these guys should keep it to the minimum, you know, especially people like Joe Bonamassa, and I think he has started to do that recently. Get back to the roots of it. And it's so sad, because he did a festival, he got in a helicopter, and the helicopter crashed and he died. So it's not just, he came back from the dead, is what pisses me off. He came back from the dead. He was, you know, the cocaine and all the rest of it, and he beat it, and he come back, and then for freak 1 in a million accident to take his life is so cruel. Somebody, what have we missed? You know, 30 years of Stevie Ray Vaughan albums. It sucks, man, but that's it. I don't add on a low note. You know, it's all positive what he did. He's practically every other blues guy that's come out in the past 20 years has picked up a guitar because they saw him live, and I'm not surprised. So what a legend. It's a sad story, it's a powerful story, and he was such a nice guy. Some of the stuff in the interviews, I was reading his interviews and I was watching some of his interviews, and it's so funny. And one the interviewer said to him, he said, what was your big break? And he looked at him and he said, I think that was my mum's water. His mother's waters broke. So a hell of a boy. Legend. Good stuff, man. So if you like this video, please subscribe. Please give me a thumbs up and tell me if you think I got close or not. I think I went a bit too crazy. I think I went too Pete Townsend on the solo. My solo was based on his live soloing, because some of the stuff you see, he is going at it. You could see he's a big fan of Jimi Hendrix. So, you know, some of I'd been watching his live videos, and that's what I got a bit carried away with my solo. But I left that in there because it's all about, you know, passion, right? It's all good stuff. So have a good one. I've been Owen, Circle of Tone, and hope you like it.